Wow, this is sort of like British court or something.
Do you guys have your recorders up there?
Yes.
Cool. All right, you guys have a question?
Hi. Just so you know, I just want you to know something. You know, I don't personally have kids, but I wasn't really sure what a mommy blogger was until recently. So, hi, mommy bloggers.
How do you feel with this Gnomeo and Juliet, from Shakespeare, taking the story from Shakespeare into animation?
Well, you know, when I first took the job, here's how it all started. My producer, Baker Bloodworth, who I'd worked with on Beauty and the Beast years before, I had just finished Shrek 2. It was 2005. I was sort of looking for my next project, and he called me and said, Kelly, I think I have a project that you might enjoy. And it's using the music of Elton John. And I was like, well, we know that works, so, that's good. And he said, and it's about garden gnomes. And I was like, wow, garden gnomes have never been done before. That's a brilliant idea. We'll do something new. And it's the story of Romeo and Juliet. And then there was this long pause. And I thought to myself, okay, well, that's a good story, but boy, that ending, it's going to be tough in a family film. So we knew early on that, okay, well, it can't have daggers and suicide and poison. So I thought, that's kind of a challenge as a director to be able to say, okay, I'm just going to see what this little soup turns out tasting like. And I hope we succeeded at it. I'm very happy with the movie, but that was the challenge, is to how do we find a way for these characters to take control of their own destiny in that third act. And that really became what the movie is about, is, okay, these two people are kept apart by this feud that is pointless, and they've got to overcome it. So, and as far as Shakespeare is concerned, West Side Story, Bonnie and Clyde, the Titanic, Avatar, even Brokeback Mountain are all really Romeo and Juliet. They're just retold. Twilight is Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
Grease is Romeo and Juliet. Yeah, of course. So when you have those elements, it's kind of tried and true. So a boy and a girl that meet that their parents don't like, that's really the core of it. So it wasn't that hard to put together. Don't judge a gnome by the color of his hat. That's what I say.
So is it 6 years in the making? You mentioned 2000.
Well, yeah, I actually, from the day I got the phone call asking if I was interested to it being in theaters, February 11th, I think it's almost 5 years to the day that I got that phone call. So that's how long animation takes. There's so much development involved in it. And the movie had been developed for some years in development, a little longer. Animated films and almost all movies really do go through a lot of trial and error before they finally find their traction. This one came together, the planets aligned, and it started working. And usually when that starts working is when they say, you know what, okay, we're going to make it. You have this much money, and here's your release date. Then you have to make it. So that's kind of what happened with this movie, is we just had all these dictates that we had to follow, and we did it. So.
I also have a question. I was wondering how different is direct a real movie with real people, and the difference directing a movie, like animation movie.
Right. Well, now I've never directed a live-action movie. I've worked on one live-action movie years ago, and I was on the set, and I've been on a lot of sets. And really, it's all storytelling, and it's really all cinema. So it's all really a lot of the same considerations you have to make the movie, and the story structure, and the characters, and the acting, and the reality of the world, so that people buy into it, and the sincerity of the characters, so that people care. You don't yell cut, and you don't yell action, and that sort of thing. And you don't have a set like this. But it's actually probably not that different, except for the practicalities of how you technically make it. The actual movie and the editing process and the structuring of it is no different. I'm actually, among animation directors, a lot of us sort of feel that I wish more people understood that, we're making real movies. You would not believe the number of people that will say, so have you ever thought about making a real movie? And I go, you know what, Shrek 2 was a real movie. Go look at the box office numbers. So, but I would love to make a live action movie at some point, and maybe one that encompasses animation. You never know. Maybe there's a Stuart Little in my future. I don't know.
So 6 years ago, was it envisioned as a 3D movie, or is that something because it is now the thing to do?
Well, a little of both. I always wanted it to be 3D because 3D was starting to come into its own, and I thought with the big, the scale that we're at in this film with the gnomes, the gnome cam, as I call it, down with those gnomes, it would be very, very interesting in 3D for the audience to be encompassed in this world. So I always wanted that. It took a while for the studio to be fully convinced that, yeah, we need the extra money to do that 3D process. So I always wanted it. We pushed for it. And then this little movie came out called Avatar, which suddenly everyone said, hey, yeah, let's make it 3D. So that helped. And it was 3D from that point forward. So luckily we were able to start on it in 3D soon enough to make it a full 3D film instead of just doing it post. Back in the back, she's been raising her hand. I have to. Hi.
Top 3 animated features that you love, and was there anything that inspired Gnomeo and Juliet from an artistic point of view?
Okay, the top 3 animated films that I like. I'll tell you, that's a really hard question because I like a lot of them. But if someone said I was on a desert island and I had one animated movie, I have to say Dumbo. I believe Dumbo is a perfect film, animated or otherwise. I just don't think you get better than that. I think Lady and the Tramp is one of the most clever animated films ever made. And can we call Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 all together? Yeah. Let's just say Toy Story. That is, those are magnificent stories told in an incredible way. And I have to recognize that. What was the other part?
Was there any films that inspired the ultimate?
There was a very direct film. There's a film made by Danny Boyle, who directed Slumdog Millionaire, a film that he made some years ago called Millions, about these 2 children who find £1 million by the railroad track. And he used primary colors, and he told it very much from a child's point of view. And the way he used color, and the way he made color kind of a character in the film, and each environment and each character had their own sort of color scheme when their scenes were going, that really was a huge influence. I saw that movie and I said, you know what? We kind of are in that world with these gnomes, the reds and the blues, and then this overgrown garden that's all green, then this outside world that's kind of washed out and hazy, and when it's sad, bringing all the colors, washing them out. So I would say Millions was the biggest visual influence on the movie, and it was live action, oddly enough. Yes?
You mentioned that you were working on this movie for over 5 years. Is there anything else, another project that you have going at the same time?
I have a few things I've been developing and playing with. Animation's pretty all-encompassing when you're directing it. So while I do have some ideas I'm playing with and I'm talking about some other possible films, I didn't really have anything simultaneously going on. Not this time anyway. It was my first solo directing effort. So whereas before when I had a co-director, we could sort of be 2 people at doing different things. Now I had to spread myself a little thinner. So I'm kind of exhausted now, actually. So it'll be a while. I'm taking a few weeks off. I'm getting married in May. So yeah.
Because of the movie?
I'm sorry?
Because of the movie?
No, I met her before the movie, and I think it took so long for me to live in London that she finally said, look, when you move back, are we getting married? And that's sort of how it happened. So luckily I want to, so it's good.
Okay, obviously you're used to your movies kind of becoming franchises. Do you see Gnomeo and Juliet becoming a franchise? And if so, do you see it becoming a franchise continuing with the Romeo and Juliet, or do you think we're going to start getting into other Shakespeare where there's totally different gnomes, not the gnomes that were from Romeo and Juliet, but
Right.
a gnome franchise?
Well, I would love that. You really don't know that until it goes out there and you see how the people and the public embrace it. I would love to direct a sequel to Gnomeo and Juliet. It's not being talked about yet. I think we have to wait and see. Because it's a non-sequel itself, you don't ever really make those plans until you know what you have. But would I love to see the Merry Gnomes of Windsor? Absolutely, or something like that. You never know. I would love that, and I certainly could see it. I hope the movie's appealing enough that people want more. That's not really as much my call as it is the studio, but I would certainly direct a sequel if I could. I'd love to. So, yes?
Going back to what you said about the poison and suicide and all that isn't appropriate for kids, what about the smaller details? Is there a lot of thought, conversation, and consideration into, is this okay for family film, is this not? And did you start out thinking it was going to be G all the time, or was it maybe PG?
Well, there's two interesting ways to go about. First of all, I don't really ever know what a movie's going to get rated. I have to sort of put that aside and try to make a good movie, try to make it appealing. I personally think that you can do a lot of things without going too adult or too childlike and make it a movie for families as much as possible. But certainly there are aspects of the story of Romeo and Juliet that we decided we probably shouldn't do. Without getting too specific, let's just say they don't consummate their relationship in the Abbey quite the same way they do in the play. But and there's no blood and things of that nature. But we found ways, I hope, to let that still sort of happen in its own way without being specifically as in the play. I mean, they're not humans. They are gnomes. So we didn't really get into the anatomy of gnomes, if you will, too much. But we try to make it appealing and fun for everyone. And I didn't want parents to have to be explaining what that was to kids. Just let them enjoy it.
But I mean, as far as the little jokes, or little, not just the story itself.
The innuendo and the...
Yeah, or any innuendo or the language, just things like that. Is
Sure.
there a lot of discussion?
Well, there's always discussion about how far to take things, and there are certainly times we try things that are too far, and all you have to do is screen it one time for an audience, and you go, okay, that's out. Or, okay, that's in. That got a big laugh. You have to just constantly measure and balance those things. And we tried a few things, but you reel it in a little bit and you realize what you can get away with. I think any good movie hits on different levels and hopefully gives the parents something to enjoy that maybe goes over the kid's head a little bit, but the kids have things that's for them. It just depends. And we've screened the movie for all kids before, and the laughs come in completely different places. And then you screen for all adults, and the laughs come. So between those two, you get laughs all the way through. So that's what we go for. I mean, there's nothing like a good laugh. And hopefully it's not a laugh that offends anyone. I mean, I'm not in the business of offending, I hope. Not yet anyway.
How did it come to the point to choose which songs from Elton John that you used?
Well, we tried a lot of things. From the very beginning, we wanted the songs to be used by Elton John and Bernie Taupin. And we wanted mainly their love songs because this was a love story. And over time, we just found out what songs gave the best energy and the best emotion for that particular scene. I wanted to use the music in this movie the way they use it in The Graduate, with Simon and Garfunkel's music, where what they're singing about is not necessarily what you're watching, but the emotion of the song supports what you're watching. And that's what we tried to do with the music. And then James Newton Howard and Chris Bacon came in and did a score that encompassed even more of those catalog pieces. But it took time. We tried a lot of things. We tried a different song here and a different song there. We couldn't use the bitches back, at least not the lyrics, case in point. But we did use a little bit of the melody there so people knew what it was. I just don't think we can have Juliet, mowing and you hear bitches back. I don't want kids singing that. So.
As far as the voice talent goes, was there any of the actors that you were really wanting to get?
Fortunately, everyone that's in the movie I really wanted. I was able to cast this. This was not a case where someone said, okay, Elton John's best friends with Michael Caine, we want to use him in a movie. I didn't have to use them. I was able to cast them. And the way I cast animated features in the best case scenario is we design the character, say Gnomeo. I put the picture of Gnomeo up in front of myself. The casting director gives me a lot of samples of voices, and they don't tell me who they are. Sometimes you recognize them, sometimes you don't. But in this case, I listened to maybe 100 different male voices from different movies, and then I went, okay, who was that one? That one looks right and feels right, and it turned out to be James McAvoy. So that's how the entire movie was cast. Fortunately, I got Sir Michael Caine, Sir Elton John, Sir Patrick Stewart, Dame Maggie Smith, and Dame Julie Walters. So I have royalty in my movie.
Actually, my first question was going to be what she asked you, so kind of just going on that. You said you don't have kids yet, right?
No, I have 2 step teenagers.
Do you think
Sort of. Not yet. Just close.
If you do have children, do you think it'll change the way you walk that line with adult humor, or?
You know, it's hard to say because, you know, I just turned 51, so I don't know if I'm going to have any kids. Yeah, but I will say this. I really kind of hope not, because I don't feel like I've ever made a children's film. I feel like I've always made movies. And my favorite movies, they don't really classify as adult or children. I mean, I suppose if you call The Godfather an adult film, fine. But I don't think Francis Coppola said, you know what, I'm going to go make an adult film here. I think you make good movies and you hope people like it. And I kind of leave it up to the ratings board and the studio to finally tell me, you know what, we really need you to just tweak this little piece, and it would just take it over the line into being more broad-based. I try to just make the movie I want to make, and fortunately on this film, I didn't get a lot of intervention for that. I sort of, by now, I've worked on enough where I sort of know that balance. But it's interesting. It's just try to make good movies, you know. My favorite movie of all time is To Kill a Mockingbird, and I would show that to any kid or any adult. And it has very adult themes in it, but you just have to make a good movie, I guess. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, if say you had a 2-year-old now, if you would have changed anything.
I don't know. I will tell you one story, though. This is interesting because about 3 years ago, I was with my stepson, who at the time was 9, I think, 9 or 10. And his mom was gone, and he and I were going to watch a movie. And he said, you know what? We have The Wrestler with and I said, okay. I hadn't seen it yet. We watched The Wrestler together. And I'm sitting there doing like the stripper scenes. And it's just me and him, and I'm going, am I supposed to be watching this? So maybe I would. So that might answer. I probably, if I were a father, I probably would have some influence as I think about that. So I don't know. It's hard to say. It's really a hard one because I don't want to. So how much?
Question.
Okay.
Were the voices always going to be the English accent? Is that what you were going for from the beginning, or what?
Well, you know, we decided that it's going to be set in Stratford-on-Avon, which is Shakespeare's birthplace. That's the town it's set in. We wanted it to feel like, okay, the reason this story is taking place is because the characters are literally living in the soil that Shakespeare sprang from. So that was really it. So the cast was British. We do have a pretty multicultural cast, as it turned out. We have Dolly Parton. We have Ozzy Osbourne. We've got Spanish little guy, whatever he is, the Mankini gnome, which I don't know where he came from. We just kind of invented him. He brought up a few questions on the parent side, I'll say that, but we got away with it. So yeah, I mean, it ended up being kind of multicultural cast, but we wanted grounded in England. So
okay, we're going to take a group shot of everyone back here.
Sure. Thank you all. This was fun.
So after you got really questions from mom bloggers, are we back to
No, you're actually, your questions are actually far more intelligible. So where do you want me?
Front and center.
All right, I'm kind of short, so that shouldn't.
Lower a little bit. You can't see everything. And we'll take. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Smile, everyone.
I'd like to talk to you guys all day.